The wind cut through the streets of downtown Chicago like a blade. Keisha Thompson hugged her thin jacket tighter, trying to shield herself from the bitter bite of January air. She counted her money again, crumpled and torn. $10. $10 that would buy her a meal, or nothing at all if she hesitated. Her stomach growled, reminding her that it had been 3 days since her last real food. Yet despite the hunger, Keisha knew she couldn't ignore what she saw a few feet away. A man in a tailored suit had collapsed on the icy sidewalk, his briefcase lying open, papers scattered like fallen leaves in the wind. People passed by, bundled in designer coats, avoiding him as if he were invisible, or worse, dangerous. A woman with expensive heels sidestepped him carefully, muttering something about being late for dinner. A man with earbuds filmed the scene on his phone, whispering, "This is going viral." Keisha's eyes locked on his pale, panicked face. He was struggling to breathe, clutching at his throat, the telltale signs of anaphylaxis clear even to someone without medical training. Instinct hit her before thought did. She had a choice: eat and survive another day, or use her last $10 to save this stranger. Her hand tightened around the crumpled bills. Flashbacks came unbidden as she weighed her options. Just 2 years ago, she had been working in a tech startup, a rising star. Then layoffs, mounting bills, and a sudden family crisis spiraled her into homelessness. She remembered nights curled up in the corner of her apartment building lobby, clutching her daughter's photo, promising herself she would never stop helping people, no matter what. This was that test, the crowd murmured, hesitant. Someone called 911, but the operator's voice crackled through the phone, saying they couldn't guarantee immediate response. Every second counted. Keisha scanned the street and noticed a small convenience store across the road. Generic epinephrine auto-injectors were there. She didn't know if she could run through the ice, dodge cars, and make it in time, but she didn't hesitate. Her legs pumped, muscles screaming from exhaustion. Memories of her old self, the confident, capable woman who solved problems without hesitation, surfaced. This was her moment. She burst through the store doors, waving $10 at the cashier, breathless. "Please, this is for someone outside." "He's dying." "I need the epinephrine." The cashier hesitated, unsure, glancing at the man filming from outside. But something in Keisha's eyes, the urgency, the resolve, pushed him to act. She grabbed the small orange and blue injector, ignoring her shaking hands. Time was slipping like water through her fingers. She dashed back into the street, ignoring the icy patches, ignoring the stares. The man's face had gone an alarming shade of blue. She knelt beside him, scanning for any identification or medical alert. Her own heart pounded, fear and adrenaline coiling together. "Stay with me," she whispered, positioning him for proper airway management. She injected the epinephrine into his thigh, counting silently to 10, willing the medicine to work. Slowly, agonizingly, color returned to his lips. He gasped, eyes fluttering open. The crowd around them murmured in shock, relief, and awe. Keisha sat back for a moment, breathing hard. She looked down at her hands, shaking again, not from fear now, but hunger, exhaustion, and cold. She had spent her last $10, her only hope for survival, yet in that moment, she felt richer than she had in months. She had done the right thing, even when no one else would. She didn't know it yet, but this stranger, this man she had just saved, was no ordinary passerby. He controlled one of the largest companies in America, a billionaire whose life she had held in her hands. And unknowingly, this small act of courage would set in motion a chain of events that would transform her life forever. As the sirens of the approaching EMTs cut through the night, Keisha pulled her jacket tighter and retreated to the shadows. She was invisible again, blending into the city that had ignored her for so long. But something inside her had changed. She had reminded herself of her worth, her skills, her compassion. And deep down, she had a feeling that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. The morning sun cut through Chicago's skyline, reflecting off glass towers and puddles of melted snow. Keisha Thompson had slept fitfully under the awning of an abandoned shop, the city streets her bed. Her stomach ached, gnawing at her relentlessly, a cruel reminder that her last $10 had gone to save a stranger. But for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of something stronger than hunger. Purpose. She rose, dusting off her jacket, pulling the tattered scarf tighter around her neck. Around her, the city was waking. Street sweepers scraping snow, early commuters rushing past without a glance, and the usual mix of lost souls wandering the sidewalks. Keisha's mind wandered back to last night. The man gasping for air, the injector, the faces of the crowd who did nothing while she acted. Little did she know. Just 3 miles away, Richard Alden, the man she saved, was sitting in his corner office atop a glass tower, shaken to his core. Billionaire, visionary, philanthropist. Yet utterly powerless in those minutes on the icy sidewalk, until Keisha appeared like an angel of fate. He paced the floor, replaying the surveillance footage over and over. The crumpled $10 in her hand, the urgency in her eyes, the way she ran through the street ignoring her own safety. He had tried to hire the best medics, pay for immediate care, but none of it mattered. She, a stranger with nothing, had saved him. Richard's assistant, Maya, knocked gently. "Sir, security footage shows her face clearly. Do you want me to find her?" "Yes," he replied, voice taut. "No, wait. I need to see her myself. No middlemen. She saved my life. I'm going to thank her in person." Back on the streets, Keisha was unaware of the billionaire's efforts. She moved through the financial district, eyes downcast, mind focused on survival. The library doors opened, offering a temporary warmth and shelter, but her stomach reminded her that warmth didn't fill emptiness. Flashbacks returned, her mother's laughter, her younger sister's smile, the day she was evicted, forced to wander the city she had once navigated with confidence and stability. Every hardship had hardened her resilience, prepared her for this moment of selflessness. At the corner where she had saved Richard, the crowd had dispersed. A few curious onlookers whispered among themselves, unsure what they had witnessed. Keisha knelt to pick up a stray paper from the man's briefcase, examining it absent-mindedly. The papers were financial reports, charts, and contracts. She had no idea the life she had touched, no idea she had held a billionaire's world in her hands for 4 minutes. Meanwhile, Richard Alden was already mobilizing. Security teams scanned the streets, stores, and alleys. Drones hovered, capturing angles. Every camera in the financial district was reviewed. His mind worked like the algorithms that had built his fortune, but this was human calculation, a debt of life owed. He had to find her. By midday, Keisha returned to her usual spots. The corner coffee shop that offered leftover pastries, the subway entrance where she scavenged cans for a few dollars, and the library where she refreshed her knowledge in tech and medical guides. Despite her exhaustion, her mind was sharp. She taught herself new ways to survive, learned from every interaction, every newspaper discarded on the streets, every overheard conversation. Knowledge, she reminded herself, was the one thing no one could take away. At 2 p.m., a black SUV slowed near her usual corner. Keisha looked up, instinctively wary. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, flanked by security. Richard Alden. Her stomach dropped, not with hunger, but with recognition. She had seen him yesterday, the man she saved. The same man. Her first instinct was to flee. She didn't want charity. She didn't want a reward. She had done what she did because it was right. Because she could. Richard approached slowly, hands visible, voice calm but commanding. "Keisha Thompson." She froze. "Who?" "Who wants to know? I do. I need to thank you. You saved my life last night." The world seemed to pause. Keisha's eyes narrowed, searching for deception, for hidden cameras, for some cruel prank. But he was earnest. Every movement, every glance, every word radiated sincerity. I didn't do it for money," she said cautiously. "I know," Richard replied. "I don't care about the money. I care about you and what you did. You risked everything to save a stranger. That kind of courage, integrity, it doesn't go unnoticed." The conversation drew the attention of bystanders. Phones were out, whispers spreading. Some nodded in approval, others in disbelief. But Keisha didn't care. She only knew that this was a moment she never sought but could not ignore. Richard handed her a small card, discreet. "I want to offer you help, the kind that lasts. Housing, education, opportunities. You've given me a second chance. Let me give you one too." Keisha's mind raced. She had been invisible for so long, overlooked, dismissed, surviving on scraps and courage. Could she trust this stranger? Could she allow herself to hope again? As she pocketed the card, the city noise returned. Horns, chatter, construction. But for the first time in months, Keisha felt a spark of possibility. Something bigger than survival. A future she hadn't dared to imagine. And somewhere deep down, she knew that her life was about to change forever. The city that had once been a maze of survival now seemed different to Keisha Thompson. She clutched Richard Alden's card tightly, the edges creased from nervous fingers. Every step she took along the cracked sidewalks felt heavier, yet somehow lighter, as if the weight of her past had begun to shift. She knew she couldn't go back to the life of cold benches, scavenged food, and endless nights of fear. But stepping forward meant confronting a world she had long been shut out from. Richard hadn't just offered help. He had ignited hope, and hope was dangerous. It made her vulnerable, made her remember all the times she had been let down. She remembered her mother's last words before sickness claimed her. Do right, even if no one's watching. That had guided her through years of hardship, and it had guided her last night, risking everything to save a stranger. But now the stranger wasn't a stranger anymore. Meanwhile, Richard's mind raced in his high-rise office. Every plan, every schedule, every algorithm for his pharmaceutical empire paled compared to the complexity of finding Keisha. She wasn't a client, she wasn't a contact. She was a human being who had, without asking, saved his life. The security teams had canvassed every known homeless encampment, every library, every subway entrance in the financial district. Every lead brought them closer, but Richard refused to rely solely on logistics. He had to see her for himself, understand her story, and ensure that the act of courage was honored. By mid-morning, Keisha made her way to a small cafe tucked between two office towers. It was her refuge, cheap coffee, pastries for donation, and a rare glimpse of normalcy. She kept her hood low, scanning the room for any hint of Richard Alden. Her instincts screamed caution. She had survived too long relying on skepticism. But beneath that wariness, a flicker of curiosity pulsed. Why was he looking for her? The cafe door chimed. She looked up. He was there, alone. No entourage, no security looming behind him, just a man in a tailored navy suit, his posture firm but not intimidating. He approached slowly, hands open, voice calm. Keisha Thompson, I'm Richard Alden. I need to thank you properly. No cameras, no audience. Just me and my gratitude. Keisha hesitated. The city had taught her that gratitude often came with strings, with expectations she couldn't meet. But something in his eyes, the raw sincerity, the recognition of what she had done, softened her resistance. I don't need anything, she said cautiously, her voice low. You don't, Richard replied. But the world should know that there are people like you. Courage doesn't belong to wealth or status. It belongs to those brave enough to act, even when it costs everything. The cafe, a quiet sanctuary moments ago, became charged with tension. Baristas paused mid-task, patrons whispered behind steaming mugs. Keisha's mind swirled. Could she trust him? Could she step into a life she had only glimpsed through the tall glass towers of the city? Richard placed a sleek envelope on the table. Inside, a letter of opportunity, a small stipend to ensure. She could eat tonight, and a promise of mentorship and guidance. I want you to have a chance, he said. Not charity. A real chance to rebuild, to grow, to use the courage you showed last night for yourself and others. Keisha's fingers trembled. The past year's hardships, lost jobs, endless nights. On concrete, hunger, the sting of betrayal and abandonment, clashed with the possibility before her. Yet the memory of that desperate man, the one whose life she had saved, reminded her why she had acted. She had done it because it was right. Maybe now she could allow herself to receive what was right for her. The hours that followed were a whirlwind. Richard walked her through the plan: safe housing, access to medical care, educational opportunities, and a pathway to meaningful work. It was overwhelming, almost too much to process. But Keisha, resilient and determined, absorbed every detail. She asked questions, challenged assumptions, and for the first time in months, envisioned a future beyond survival. As night fell, Keisha sat in her new temporary apartment, the city lights spilling through the window. The sounds of Chicago, honking, cars, distant sirens, footsteps on pavement, felt different. They were no longer threats, but reminders of a world that could be navigated, conquered, and even embraced. She opened the envelope again. The letter, folded neatly, contained a simple line that would stay with her forever. Courage will always find its reward. Somewhere across the city, Richard Alden watched the streets from his office. He knew that finding Keisha was only the beginning. The act she performed wasn't just a life saved. It was a catalyst, a ripple that could change countless others if nurtured. And deep down, he understood that in helping her rise, he was also restoring his faith in humanity, one brave, selfless act at a time. For Keisha, tomorrow promised new challenges, but for the first time, the weight of the world on her shoulders felt manageable. She wasn't invisible anymore. And as she drifted into a rare, hopeful sleep, she knew that her life had irrevocably shifted. The line between survival and purpose had blurred, and she was ready to step boldly into the future. The morning sun cut through the thin blinds of Keisha Thompson's temporary apartment, casting stripes of light across the bare floor. For the first time in months, she woke without the gnawing ache of hunger in her stomach. The warmth of the small heater and the softness of the donated bedding were luxuries she had long forgotten existed. But comfort, as she quickly remembered, came with its own weight, expectations, decisions, and the uncertainty of stepping into a world she barely knew. Richard Alden had been true to his word. He had arranged for her to meet with counselors, social workers, and mentors. He emphasized not charity, but opportunity. Yet Keisha felt an unspoken pressure to prove herself. Every email, every form, every handshake was a reminder that the world saw her as rescued, not as capable, not as equal. The first challenge came sooner than expected. At a downtown networking seminar for community leaders and business innovators, Keisha felt like a fish out of water. Men and women in tailored suits discussed strategies she had never learned. The room smelled of expensive coffee and power. Keisha clutched her notebook, jotting down every name and idea, her mind racing to absorb a language she'd been cut off from for too long. Then came the whispered doubts. Do I belong here? Am I out of place? Will they see me as just a homeless woman who got lucky? Memories of cardboard beds, cold nights, and the sting of rejection flashed before her eyes. She wanted to turn and leave, to retreat to the shadows where life was predictable, if harsh. But she remembered the look in Richard's eyes, the gratitude he had shown, the faith he had placed in her courage. The turning point arrived when she was paired with a local businesswoman, Marissa Lane, known for mentoring underprivileged youth. Marissa's sharp gaze softened as she listened to Keisha's story. You've already demonstrated the kind of bravery and initiative most people never achieve, Marissa said. Now it's about channeling that into skills, influence, and strategy. Can you do that? Keisha nodded, her throat tight. I have to. I won't waste this. The following weeks became a whirlwind of trials. From learning basic office software to understanding business etiquette, from volunteering at local clinics to shadowing mentors, every day pushed her beyond comfort. Her body ached, her mind swirled. But with each task, each small success, the invisible chains of the streets loosened. One evening, as she returned to the apartment, Keisha paused at the window, watching the city bustle below. She had once walked these streets unseen, dismissed, overlooked. Now people she had helped in the past waved or smiled. Children ran past, reminding her of the daughter she had lost touch with in her struggles. And she realized something profound. Courage was contagious. Her single act of kindness had created a ripple she hadn't imagined. But growth was never linear. A financial setback at one of the community programs left her anxious. A misunderstanding during a mentor meeting led to a humiliating critique. She felt herself slipping, the old fears clawing back. Yet every time, doubt crept in. She remembered the man she had saved, the billionaire whose life she had risked her last $10 for. She had acted without expectation, and it had changed everything. Maybe, just maybe, she could navigate these new challenges the same way, with heart, bravery, and unwavering resolve. The city lights sparkled through the morning haze as Thompson stepped onto the streets she had once walked in desperation. Today, though, she was not invisible. Her stride carried purpose, each step a declaration that survival had transformed into opportunity. Months had passed since that fateful night when her last $10 had saved a man she had never met. That single act had not only altered his life, it had irrevocably changed hers. Richard Alden had kept his promise. He had secured housing, mentorship programs, and introductions that opened doors Keisha never thought possible. Yet she had learned the most important lesson on the streets. Dignity was not given. It was earned, nurtured, and maintained even in the smallest acts. Her past remained a shadow, yes, but now it illuminated her strength. The morning's first challenge arrived in the form of a gala hosted by one of Richard's philanthropic foundations. Keisha adjusted the hem of her red dress, feeling the tension in her shoulders. She was the guest of honor, not because she was rich, not because she had connections, but because she had embodied courage in a way few could. As she entered the grand hall, cameras flashed, and whispers followed. Some admired her, some doubted. But she ignored them all, focusing on the task at hand, telling her story. Taking the stage, Keisha's voice initially trembled. She recounted her journey, nights on cardboard, hunger gnawing at her, the relentless struggle to survive. She spoke of fear, loss, and despair, and then of the moment that changed everything, the moment she chose kindness over self-preservation. Her words were raw, unpolished, but they carried truth, and truth resonates louder than wealth or status. The crowd listened, rapt, as she finished. Silence hung in the room for a heartbeat, then applause erupted. Among the faces was Richard, smiling, his eyes reflecting pride and gratitude. But Keisha's gaze wandered beyond him. She saw the children, the young women, and men in the audience, many facing their own hardships. They saw themselves in her, and in that reflection, Keisha realized the full weight of her actions. Her courage had ignited hope. Later, in a private conversation, Richard approached her. "Keisha, I owe you more than words can express. That night you saved my life. I've always believed in paying debts, and I want you to have more than I could have imagined. A foundation in your name, scholarships, programs. You'll guide others just as you've guided me and yourself." Keisha's heart swelled, but she shook her head. "No, Richard. I don't need anything for myself. I only want to make sure someone else gets a chance when it seems impossible. That's all that matters." Weeks turned into months. Keisha threw herself into the programs, mentoring, volunteering, and speaking. Her past as a homeless woman and the courage she had displayed became a beacon. Every student, every struggling adult she helped was a testament to her resilience. She had traded fear for purpose, scarcity for impact. One evening, walking through the same streets where she had once been invisible, Keisha paused. The city hummed around her, alive, chaotic, beautiful. A man stumbled nearby, caught in an allergic reaction. Without hesitation, she ran, EpiPen in hand, instinct guiding her, courage fueling her. She saved him just as she had saved Richard. And in that moment, she understood fully. Kindness is not measured in money, but in action. One act can ripple outward infinitely, touching lives in ways unimaginable. Keisha smiled to herself. The streets no longer defined her. They were a canvas, painted with the choices she had made, the lives she had touched, and the future she was still building. From the shadows of desperation, she had stepped into light. Not for glory, not for wealth, but because bravery, compassion, and integrity always demand recognition, even when no one is watching, and somewhere watching from afar. Richard Alden knew that the woman who had once given everything she had to save a stranger was now saving the world in ways no one could have predicted.